Bosnia and Herzegovina art is the genesis and heritage from the region of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and its constituent ethno-religious groups from prehistoric times to today. Ancient heritage, prehistory and the boundaries of today's Bosnia and Herzegovina. There have been many layers of prehistory cultures, and their creation and disappearance is linked to migrations of unidentified ethnic groups. Paleolithic in Bosnia and Herzegovina is marked with the oldest monument of Paleolithic in southeastern Europe, engravings in a cave named Badanj, near Starlac in Herzegovina. Most famous being the horse attacked by arrows, preserved in fragments and dated around 14500–2000 BC, during the time when Neolithic and copper cultures were starting to appear. In Bosnia and Herzegovina began interesting mixture of Mediterranean cultures and those of Pannonian cultures. Herzegovina was under the influence of Impresso ceramics from Western Mediterranean, as seen in Green Cave near Mostar, Kari near Starlac, Lizišići near Konjic and Pekmlini near Gruda. People used to live in caves or simple settlements on hilltops. In the upper mainstream of Bosna River and northeast parts of Bosnia, people used to live in wooden houses built along rivers. In that culture we can see influences from Adriatic cultures on south and Starčević culture on northeast. Original expressions of the culture are ceramic pots on four legs, so-called written. We can find the also in Danilo culture on the Croatian coast. Thanks to these pieces, Karkanj culture is considered a part of wide circle of Neolithic nations that followed a cult of life force. Budmir culture near Sarajevo is distinctive with fine glazed ceramics with miscellaneous geometrical decorations. Figures from Budmir are unique sculptures modeled with hand. Heads are almost like portraits with emphasized parts of body. Bronze Age settlements in Herzegovina were built like citadels, and in Bosnia we have necropolises with stone tumuli. During that time, bronze arms, decorated plates, flat necklaces and fibulas were decorated with specific geometrical style of engraved ornaments. From 7th century BC, bronze is replaced by iron, and only jewelry and art objects were still made out of bronze. Bronze culture of Illyrians, ethnic group with distinct culture and art forms, started to organize itself on today's Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Different Illyrian tribes, under the influence of Hallstatt cultures from north, formed original regional centers, with the notable exception of Pod near Bugino in the upper valley of the Vrba River. Nothing is known of the settlements in eastern Bosnia in the cemeteries of Belotic and Bila Crkva. The rites of inhumation and cremation are attested, with skeletons in stone cists and cremations in urns. Metal implements appear here side by side with stone implements. Most of the remains belong to the fully developed Middle Bronze Age. Very important role in their life was the cult of the dead, which is seen in their careful burials and burial ceremonies, as well as richness of the burial sites. In northern parts there was long tradition of cremation and burial in shallow graves, while in the south the dead were buried in large stone or earth tumuli that in Herzegovina were reaching monumental sizes, more than 50 meters wide and 5 meters high. Charpodian tribes have had affinity to decoration. Heavy, oversized necklaces out of yellow, bluey, white glass paste, and large bronze fibulas, as well as spiral bracelets, diadems and helmets out of bronze foil. In 4th century BC, first outbreak of Celts is recorded. They brought the technique of the pottery wheel, new types of fibulas and different bronze and iron belts. They only passed on the way to Greece, so their influence in Bosnia and Herzegovina is negligible. antiquity. In the Neretva Delta in the south there was important Hellenistic influence of Illyrian tribes. Their capital was Dar-Orson in Osaniki near Starlak, to date main center of ancient culture in Bian-Amp-H. Dar-Orson in 4th century BC was surrounded by megalithic, 5 meters high stone walls, composed out of large trapeze stones blocks. Doors have made their unique bronze coins and sculptures. Finally, Romans subdued the Illyrians in 1st century BC, and after that the history of these parts is history of Illyrian provinces of Rome and Byzantium. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Romans built several small temples decorated with reliefs. The complex of Step Sanctuary in Gradic near Posescu from year 184 AD had marble temple dedicated to recently deceased Emperor Marcus Aurelius. On the reliefs we can feel naturalism of native craftsmen, and in mosaics the Hellenistic influence, especially in those found in villas near Starlak. Late Roman art in Bian-Amp-H is marked with building of villas, Christian mausoleums, basilicas and oratories like Mausoleum in Sipovo near Jajce and Villa Mogayelo near Kapelgina. Sculptures that we inherited are ones like Hellenistic relief of Minerva, Jupiter and Genius Protector from Sipovo, and extremely barbarically stylized relief of Four Friends from Zenica. Medieval art in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In Bosnia and Herzegovina the Romanesque influence came from Croatia, and it was never accepted in full, only in use of some elements. Those few monuments with Romanesque elements that were preserved are dating from later times. For example, in the motifs from tombstones in Bosnia, natively called stekak, or the high parts of Tower of St. Luke in Jajce, influences of Gothic art in the 14th century are supported by culture of urban cities, preaching orders, and knightly culture. On Bosnian culture there was slight influence of religion and the strong one of nobility, that is recognizable in the organization of a city that is actually a settlement close to feudal fortress. Feudal fortresses of thick, roughly cut stone walls. Shape is following the terrain. Buildings have step roofs and towers are often and high. The most beautiful one is perhaps Royal Court in Kraljeva Sučeska. It has Gothic portals and windows, buttresses, and high rooftops. The way some Bosnian nobility treated its dead is somewhat special. For the earliest times of Bosnian kingdom, the nobility was buried in large necropolises near the roads with graves marked by a monumental tombstone, called stekak. Stekak comes in several different shapes and was sometimes engraved with reliefs showing all sorts of motifs, from figurative to symbols, and sometimes writings in Bosnian Cyrillic. Their existence is strongly linked with heretical Bosnian church, and most of the motifs are derived from the beliefs, but some derived from Romanesque and Gothic art of the West. There are two beautiful examples of illuminated manuscripts from medieval Bosnia. H.V.A.L.'s Missionary, kept in Zagreb, is ravishingly decorated manuscript with many miniatures. Missal H.R. Voljevukska Hrvatinica, a liturgical book of the Bosnian Duke and ruler of Dalmatia. H.R. Voljevukska Hrvatnik, today in Istanbul, is colorfully painted with many details of knightly culture. Both were painted in Split, Croatia. Ottoman art in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the 16th century, entire Bosnia was under Ottoman rule, so the influences of Renaissance and later Baroque from West were extinguished. The only places where some Western art could be found were lonesome Franciscan monasteries in Visoko, Krasivo, Franciscan monastery in Fovnica, Franciscan monastery in Kraljeva Sučeska, etc. However, that opened a new era in Bian-Amp-H art, that of Islamic art, and it flourished until the 19th century. Actually, there were three constant art traditions in Bian-Amp-H living side by side. Catholic Western, one Orthodox Byzantine, and one an Ottoman Islamic that was the most powerful one. Ottomans were developing urban cities very fast upon the conquest of Bosnia. Enriched by Islamic and Byzantine experiences, they built so much that it can be compared only with medieval building in Dalmatian cities. For example, in Foča in 16th century Ottomans built 17 mosques, 29 public fountains, 6 public baths and 13 caravanserai motels. Sarajevo is an example of a non-urban open city where the most important buildings are organized around one veining street, Kasya. In Sarajevo the largest is famous Baskazia with shops of 50 different crafts from the 15th century. Also in Baskazia is most impressive Gazi Husrev Beg's Mosque, also known as Beg's Mosque, built in 1531. Founded on Byzantine central square plan, it has dome on large drum, 2 smaller domes leaning on both sides of drum and a semi-dome behind. In addition, above entrance is a porch with 5 tiny domes. Inside it is filled with rich wall ornaments in wooden Arabic calligraphic writings. The complex is complete with a high tower and fountain in the courtyard. Islamic manuscripts, decorated in the Persian style with beautiful Islamic calligraphy, were often in Bosnia. So now we have numerous examples in the Bosnian libraries. In the 16th century, the Jews expelled from Spain came to Sarajevo where they were allowed to settle. Beside important influence on Bosnian culture, they brought with them luxury decorated manuscript called Sarajevo Haggadah from the 14th century, now in the Sarajevo Museum. The bridge in Islamic art was very important, not only because it required great skill of an architect, but also because of symbolic meaning of a bridge in Islam, where it is a mediator between heaven and earth. That's why there is no surprise that the high point of Islamic architecture in Bosnia is a bridge. Bridge of artisan Hajj, written in Mostar with its arch over river Neretva, is 29 meters long and 19.5 meters high. With subtle parabola it looks higher and more fragile than it is, an effect seen only in Gothic cathedrals. In Bosnian Islamic architecture, stone is reserved for religious, public buildings and fortifications, while private houses were built out of wooden serpic, with often console constructions of the upper floors. They could be more open with large windows. When the power of Ottomans started to descend in the middle of the 17th century, so did the influence of Islamic art in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Art in Austro-Hungarian period. Right after the Austro-Hungarian occupation, the art scene in Bosnia comes alive. Intense building is represented in modernization and structural transformation of cities. Architecture is in eclectic pseudo-styles like Classicism, Neo-Renaissance, Neo-Baroque, and even Neo-Romanesque, and Neo-Gothic. Unique pseudo-style is Oriental eclectic style based on Moorish architecture of southern Spain and Egypt. The style was quite foreign to urban ambient of Bosnian cities, as can be seen in Sarajevo, Mostar Gymnasium and Travnik. The first Bosnian artists were educated in large European academies thanks to scholarships of cultural societies like Provjeta and Napredak. All those artists like Atanasiju Popovic, Lazar Drjaka, Gabriel Žurkic, Branko Radulovic, Peter Sane, etc., are marked with academism with slight touches of Impressionism, Art Nouveau, and Pointillism. After the Great Exhibition of Bosnian artists in 1917, the native-born artists have prevailed. Modern styles that entered Bosnia were Expressionism and Cézanism. Art in the Yugoslavian kingdom. After the end of World War I, the Society of Artists from SHS was organized and they held numerous exhibitions and artistic gatherings like the Blazouge colony of Vladimir Becic. Participants of that colony were Roman Petrovich and Jovan Bijelic that derived their art to abstract form, while Carlo Mijic is devoted to coloristic landscapes. Carlo Mijic, with Art Nouveau and Impressionistic influences, was probably the best painter of 20s and 30s in the entire Yugoslavia. Sadly, the art production in BNH was reduced to crumbs by the Yugoslavian government, so lots of artists never returned to BNH from the studies in Zagreb and Beograd, while many were also leaving the country. First renewal happened with the Group of Four, an engaged art of Roman Petrovich and his cycle called The Children of the Street. Mijic and Thoko Mizalic founded the art association called Krug, with strong urban aesthetics of nature. Vojo Dimitrijevic painted Spain in 37, a representative artwork of coloristic expression with traces of Picasso and Chagall. In 30s the architects were influenced by ideas of functionalism, humane architecture and Bauhaus. Those buildings were uniting a function, content and form, without unnecessary plastic decoration, and with simple rhythm of windows and modern constructions. Art in the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, right after World War II and founding the new country of all South Slavs, Communist Yugoslavia. The artists have found new expression through themes of revolution and war. Ismet Mujsinovic draws numerous expressionistic figures in his cycle, The Battle of Sucheska, and Branko Sotra made powerful, almost abstract engravings. Architecture was also under the direct influence of socialistic architecture, but never reached the monumentality of the original works. In the 50s, careful and slow, the transformation of art through economy and decoration toward abstraction happened. The first was sculptor Mirko Ostoja, who replaced classical modeling with iron welding. Even the communist state changed its feeling toward modern art by commissioning large abstract monuments dedicated to famous battles in the war. Young architects, gathered around Professor Juraj Neidhart, were trying to achieve connections of modern architecture and BNH tradition and surroundings. Those were buildings like the Mostar Mall, Razvitak in 1970 by Paljagrajaj Mall in 1976 by Arjadrich, DZ. Karakanen, Kurta. In the 60s many architects were leaving traditional boundaries and made important buildings in manner of functionalism. The telecommunication building in Addis Ababa by Ivan Strauss and Zadrov Kokovacevic, or Skanderia Hall in Sarajevo by Zivrad Yankovic and Halid Muhasilovic. In the 70s, the rewarded architectural plans were Zenica Theatre in 1977 by Jahil Finci and Zlatko Aglien, Hotel Rose in Mostar and Gripe Hall in Split, an art expression inspired by old Bosnian culture and tradition, appeared in the graphic work of Dzevad Hozo and in paintings of Mehmet Zaimovic, Said Hassan Efendik and Misad Berber. Quite opposite to that, the urban expression of Ismar Mujsinovic is more related to modern film montage and photo optics, while Branko Dimitrijevic is a conceptual artist who works mainly outside BNH. An example of architecture in the 80s is Holiday Inn Hotel, built in 1983, and the Unis Twin Towers, built in Sarajevo in 1986 and designed by Ivan Strauss. Among the people of the city, the Twin Towers are commonly called Momo and Uzia. Art after the Bosnian War. Cultural preservation is underway in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which can be seen with the most recent reconstruction of Stari Most in Mostar and many Other structures of cultural and historical significance which were damaged or destroyed in the recent war. Many other projects, unfortunately, have still stifled by political disputes and lack of funds. Commercial construction in the years following the Bosnian War has seen a boom in Sarajevo. Sarajevo is one of the cities with the most construction in southeastern Europe. The UNE's Twin Towers have been renovated completely. On the site of the former Oslobođenje Towers, the AVAZ Towers have now been constructed. In the Rusno residential area, the Bosnian company Bosmal has constructed the Bosmal city center, which includes the tallest set of twin towers in the Balkans at 120 meters each. The AVAZ Twist Tower, located in Marian Dvo, Sarajevo, is the tallest tower in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is the new headquarters for AVAZ, the most popular Bosnia and Herzegovina newspaper company.